This is Talking My Walking. I am Rodrigo Ribeiro, just another voice in the wilderness. Today I'm going to talk about the primacy of private property and profits, technoscientism, and the dignity of life. Without life, not only human life, but life itself, there would not be, but especially without the human intelligence and creativity, there would not be private property, the primacy of private property and profits, and the superiority, the inevitability of capitalism as a system that is not as old as it seems, especially this form of capitalism. So these two main forms of capitalism that we have today, which is industrial capitalism and financial capitalism, it's not very old. The markets itself, that is as old as people start to trade. So the people would have their products, they would go to a specific place that usually was in specific dates. Of course, it started in different ways, but when it started to be organized, and people would trade things, okay, just to buy what they didn't need, their surplus production, in order to be able to buy the stuff they didn't have, they needed for their own survival. So this is absolutely normal if we think about the use of money, what the money should be about, and there was no, according to many authors, and it makes perfect sense that there is the myth of barter. Barter has never been a form. This is not an evolution. We have these ideas of evolution as something that goes from one phase to another, to another, to another, always evolving, always as if it's just goal is going up and up and up, in always this hierarchical, this idea of from lower forms to superior forms, inferior forms to superior forms. Okay, this is wonderful. Just to see how language framing and ideological framing that we are supposed to think about it and to take it as scientific and is ideological. That's why I had the religion. The religion of the moment is technoscientism. It's technoscientism is the religion. Technocracy is the regime, or technofascism, and for profit, power and control. That's what it is. There is nothing else. There's nothing. I'm talking about democracy, talking about freedom, and talking about human rights and environmental rights and this and that is worthless unless we take seriously the very system that creates the inequality, that produces destruction, and that just transforms us into these tools, these instruments of destruction, self-destructive and annihilation. That's what I wrote about it, I thought about it. That's the only thing that this system really wants from us, as participatory, no participatory politics, no participatory economics, but participatory annihilation. This is exactly what the very existing para-civilizational paradigm. This is not just about an economic system or a political system. This is a civilizational inheritance, cultural and behavioral, that that's how we frame the perception of life, the perception of reality. That's how what we believe we are, through these views of life, these views of what is worth and everything else. And this is and so much of what is understood as scientific is ideological. It is ideological in the sense that it is used to manipulate people's perception and control people's behavior and people's minds. It's not ideological in the sense that is just to defend a specific ideology. It's ideology used, and this is what people need to understand when we talk about ideology, because ideology is used by the few, to control the many. Ideology is for suckers, in the sense, not because ideas are not important, but ideological systems, ideological narratives usually are not part of a culture of liberation, are part of a culture of enslavement, of control, of social control and mind control. So a culture of liberation is a culture that helps us to navigate through the logical fallacies, the instrument and everything, to improve our critical skills, to develop our critical skills, to train them. Okay? It's not to follow or to. It helps to us to understand and to see life through the lenses of justice and truth, which are relational. Which means that they are related to real events and facts, not to fantasies, not to fiction, not to ideological framing. Life is, human life, not only human life, all life is sacred. Because, and when I'm talking about life, we have to talk about the Earth systems, okay? That's without the Earth systems and the solar system, for sure, without all that is required for life to flourish, needs to be combined in order to make it happen. Because that's why we don't find life everywhere, because life, at least complex life systems and ecosystems as we have in the planet Earth, because it just requires the right amount of it just can happen within certain circumstances and stability, and there is the need for several things to be combined in order life to happen. I mean, it doesn't matter if you believe that it was God who created life. Even if we imagine it was God that created life, the circumstances, I mean, it is, I mean, you know, when you talk about life, that it was God who created the hydrosphere, the geosphere, and all the systems together combined, the fact that Earth has an inner core, and volcanic eruptions, and all the things that we now know for a fact that are essential for life in this planet, as the distance, the right star, and the distance from the star, and everything else. So life is the basis for everything. So there would not be society, not life and nature. So there would be no societies. There is no these complex systems that exist today that were created by us, that are artificial. Okay, they are not natural. They can only exist due to two characteristics of the human species. Is because we are deeply social and cultural species. That's why, and of course because we have this creative imagination, the power of our intelligence to produce symbolic language, and the abstract thinking that allows us to create languages such as mathematics, as and arts, and all the all that is associated with the power of our intelligence and creativity. So this is our reality. But our reality, as a species, we are not the king of anything. We have this potential, and our potential should not be used to conquer, should not be used to control, should not be used to change, at least to change to without, there is a principle, the precautionary principle should be an important, a crucial principle in any political or economic system or cultural system that we should follow. Because we always assume that this time, you talk about so many, since especially the Industrial Revolution and the revolution in chemistry and biology, in the science, in art science in general, this revolution that has that allows us to create huge machines and synthetic drugs and products, and so molecules that allow us to introduce in the natural systems artificial creations that, of course, by interacting with them, they are going to create change that cannot be controlled. Okay, it's not but just because we can do it, and we do it not for the benefit, we have not been developing science and technology and arts, for the benefit of the people. If we go back in history, it was always driven by elites and for the enjoyment of elites, and for their their self-promotion and aggrandizement, for to fulfill their psychopathic and sociopathic and megalomaniacal and narcissistic whims. The consumer society that we know today, that has been developed especially in the 20th century after the Second World War, was part of the need to expand the sales, to create to the idea that we need to give these people enough money to buy the stuff we produce, because we cannot take how can we expand the markets, and like how can we grow exponentially our sales if we do not have people to buy the stuff. So this was before this, for most of human history, the great creations, artistic creations, music, painting, literature, and everything else, the theaters, the museums, the schools, everything that was great creations, artistic, architectonic, they were not for for mass consumption. They were for the elites. So, which means there was nothing democratic about the artistic creation and cultural creation. It was the popular culture. Of course, there has always been popular culture, but the popular culture was always used as a form of keeping people annihilated, alienation, not in a state of alienation. Which means, if you have a Colosseum in Rome, or the modern football stadiums, or other big spectacles like music halls, and for rock concerts, pop music, and this kind of events. These events are mainly to keep people in a state of alienation. This is not a culture of liberation. They use these pop artists, these people that are transformed into idols, in heroes, as liberators, which they are not. Usually, it doesn't matter. Individually, they might be revolutionaries. They might have revolutionary. They might be driven by the fights, freedom fights, and liberation movements, and whatever. It's not about that. It's the product itself, because this system. This capitalist system and the imperialist, because cannot be other, it has to be imperialist, it has to be expansionist, it has to expand to control the resources and everything else, the markets. It's not only about looking for markets, it's about controlling the markets, controlling the national economies, going and to use them. A banking system and the local oligarchs and plutocrats in order to control the foreign economies. That's what it is about. So the creation of the society of spectacle, as the book by Guy Debord, I mean, I'm sorry, but some of you know the book. This society, I'm not going to follow the book. It's not about the book. I just refer to it because there is this book exists. The Spectacle Society, La Société du Spectacle. because the guy was French. The idea is that it doesn't matter if it was during the Roman Empire. These mass events, cultural events, have been always about keeping people distracted. It was been always as weapons of mass deception. Okay? And religion too, especially organized religion. Because there is if we need religion or not is a different thing. If we need religion, I believe that we don't need religion to humanize us. We might have this feeling of spirituality, and we need but spirituality, to me, it needs to be associated with life itself and nature. That's through nature, through experience, life and nature, and the dignity of it, through the deep dignity of it, that we can have a spiritual liberation, in my opinion. That's why we need to a totally different approach, not through a God, through these ideas of, not a plurality of gods, not through polytheism or monotheism or this ism or that ism. We don't need that. We can look to life and nature with the eyes, with the knowledge that has been provided by science. And nevertheless, we are not technocrats. We can have a spiritual, a fact-based spiritual experience. Okay? Which gives us the experience of that we understand. We have the feeling, the unity, we have the feeling of the systems that are interconnected and interdependent, and we know it, and at the same time we have the deep feeling as being part of it, this holistic feeling of being part of it, and also the idea that our societies, our culture, our creations need also to be need to be based on the respect of it, not to dignify and glorify private property and wealth accumulation and profits, because this is the only religion. Then these two religions in a symbiotic relation, which is technoscientism, which is not science, is the use of science to produce a pseudo to use pseudoscience to produce a religion. That's how we are controlled, and that's how perception management for social control and political control works, and works, and it works independently of the level of the cultural sophistication, because it's culture. There is something very important to understand, which is that the high levels of culture do not liberate us from being deeply ignorant. And the problem is that we are not ignorant out of lack of knowledge, but out of the combination of wrong knowledge that just transforms us into useful idiots. Okay, and nevertheless we are full of shit. We can so many people in this world, in academics, and they can, if you listen to them speaking, they have a huge they have a huge knowledge kind of a database, okay? But what does it mean? Does it mean that they produce sound knowledge themselves? They produce sound information? They really care about truth and justice? Can we trust them? No, of course not. Because someone that cares about truth and justice doesn't care about culture in the sense that the truth. There is the need. Okay, there is the need for understanding concepts and ideas, and the need to understand the language framing and how logical fallacies are used and everything about that. Okay, that is the need, because all of us can understand. I mean, it's very difficult to understand. For example, if you know nothing about physics and mathematics and engineering and electronics and this and that, it might be difficult to explain it, because it's these abstract languages and equations and all these things they need a solid base that you can then use those tools in a way that it's clear for us. Okay, that's fine. But to understand political and economic systems and social systems, we don't need that, because it's mainly a system. These systems are based on laws and principles and values, not laws that are created by, in many cases, law firms, not even by the people in the parliaments. Okay, so what it means is that what we need is the ability, is to train our ability, and that we do not need to be a PhD in anything to start spotting liars and manipulators. Okay, that's exactly like that. That's why people say that you are ignorant. You know, do you know this author and that author? And no, you don't need to know them. You don't need to feel ashamed or guilty of anything about that. What you should feel ashamed is that you don't work. You think that you are free, and you don't try to work yourself to really and have a better understanding how manipulation works, how propaganda works. You know, why so easily we become tools of those that exploit us, that use and abuse us. You know, from the local level to the national level to the international and global level. This requires work. This requires intentional. This requires a conscious transformative process of cultural liberation, which is political and also economic, because you need to understand how the economy works, how money is created, who controls these things, cui bono. Not only to point out what's wrong, who are the bad guys. That doesn't solve anything. You need to understand the roots of the problems, not only people, but the system, the very system that allows them, of the very systems or complex systems that allows them to use, to enrich themselves, to become more powerful, and to grow their control over the rest of us. and how they manipulate us through. That's what I was trying to say, and I'm going to go back to it now. That's this mass cultural and the commodification of everything. The massification, the commodification and massification of everything does not everything, for sure, but the stuff that as everything is transformed into stuff, is cultural stuff and products, is artistic products. No, it's not part of a culture of liberation. It's part of a culture of enslavement, a culture to transform us dependent on these products that we believe, and we are I am a fan of this. I am a fan of that. This guy is my hero. That guy is my hero. I mean, this is just this person is the authority. No. The only person that needs to be an authority on what is required for you to understand reality is yourself. That's who needs to be the authority. But of course, to become authorities, okay, we need to understand that what we are is bits and pieces of other people's knowledge and experience. So therefore, it's very important to understand that to whom and to what we expose ourselves, to what do we allow to influence us, to train us, to reinforce the belief systems that in many ways can work against our best interests, which means the interests of the collective, of most of us. The hippie movement and all these, I mean, does these movements do not have? Does these movements do not have anything positive as part of a wider social and cultural and political liberation? Yes, they do. But if you put everything together, it was most of it is annihilation. Alienation. Because it just shows you our period of society. That okay, there is for example, in America, there is the Vietnam War going on, and there is you have the civil movement. I mean, you have things that are part of that, but it doesn't, it is a bourgeois, and you need to understand it like that. It's just because a society is very wealthy and allows people to really, that's exactly because you are in a moment where a society has the ability to support these cultural and movements or social movements, because it has immense resources, and so we cannot separate the moment of history of a country and the resources available, and our life was cheap, our living, how to access the necessities, to satisfy the goods and services, to satisfy the needs. They were available, and it was not that difficult to survive with very little, because there was I mean, I'm not trying to say that there was no difficulties, there was no people. Of course, because in a racialized society, and with so many problems and a very deeply exploitative society, there is many problems. But at that point in history, it needs to be ripe. What I mean is that the societal conditions were ripe, the circumstances were ripe for this movement to happen. It's not the point is that these movements are not really spontaneous. You know, everything has their the circumstances are always very important to shape a cultural and social movements. And the thing is that they can be manipulated. You know, that's exactly the problem that is happening right now. That our grievances in the Western countries, which, in spite of all the differences, because there are lots of differences between in every country, is not. We cannot think it's not true that Western countries, and if we put also in this group Japan and North Korea, or South Korea and New Zealand and Australia and Canada and all these countries, we do not. Every society is different, but we share some things in common. I'm not North Korea and Japan are really different, but all the rest of the countries we share things in common. But our grievances are surely being weaponized, and we are being our grievances are being weaponized, and we ourselves are being instrumentalized and tribalized. And this is how we thinking that we are making our choices. We are not. We are being used, and this is really bad. But that's what it is. So there is the need for understanding why the supremacy of profits and private property and capitalist market systems should be always subordinated to the respect and dignity and sanctity of life and nature. Not because that's the thing. I'm not trying. The point is, if you are stupid enough to think, like so many people say, oh, these people, these Greens and these environmentalists and they put life for them, nature and the trees and this and that are more important than human life. No. That stupid assumption. I do not say there are not people like that doesn't exist. They are also delusional. But the point is, that's not we, the many, need to understand. We need to understand us, the human species, and the human systems, this in the context of nature and earth systems, okay, and life. And because we really need this holistic understanding to put things into perspective. That is not about supremacy of anything. It's about understanding the interdependencies. It's about understanding that we could not exist our systems, so that we believe the primacy or supremacy of our systems, of our cultural systems, of our societies, of our civilizations, and blah blah blah. And this glorification of our systems is morally wrong, is dangerous, but is dangerous for our own survival, for the survival of our species. And it's not good. And most of us do not benefit with it. Because, as I said, we live in a society that just gives us what they... I mean, the creation, as I said, the creation of consumer society was not because they wanted the best for us. Because these people that we call leaders, these people, the oligarchs and plutocrats that control us, they don't care about us. They just use us. And at a certain point in history, in the history of the industrial capitalism, we were useful as consumers. Okay? And now, with financial capitalism, we are becoming useless. Why does it matter? It matters because we are always instrumental. The division is not between left and right. The problem is not between left and right. The problem is that we need to understand what are the roots of the problems, where they come from. What are the societal roots, the political, economic roots of the problems? What are the civilizational heritage that allows us to not be able to overcome, to overrule these problems? This is what we need to think before we allow ourselves to be instrumentalized, which means that we become left or right, especially by the right. And why do I say it? Because the right, there is reasons. There is objective reasons or reasonable reasons. They're not really objective, but they are reasonable. They are kind of common sense that we the many, I mean the working class, the middle class, believe in these ideological and cultural narratives that shape reality in ways that it makes sense. It makes sense that capitalism is the best possible system. Private property is common sense. Why should it be different? And other and everything else. While the radical left ideology and narrative framing, telling that we should abolish private property, for example, or we should abolish class society, or we should have I mean, it's not, but again, I have to tell, because collectivism is, as it sounds, also bad. But we could talk about mutualism, because as is an essential part of the survival of social species. But it seems that it's not by being individualist that the survival of the meanest, not the fittest, because it's very easy to understand that our societal systems, it's not the survival of the fittest, it's the survival of the meanest. And why? Because the meanest can use the resources to pay others, to bribe others to do their dirty jobs. That's how it is, that's how it works. So according to the common sense, and you need to understand that the common sense is produced by the dominant culture, by the dominant framework. The common sense doesn't come from and it's not it has to come from somewhere. Everything, the way we perceive everything, it has always a frame. We always require a structure, okay, a natural structure from the natural environment and from the cultural and social environment and economic and political environment that is the systems or the subsystems of the earth system or the societal system. So we cannot understand, or our common sense comes from somewhere. Doesn't come from thin air. It's not by default. It is based on the dominant cultural system where we live, where we form our identity, how we perceive ourselves, build our relations, perceive others and life and everything else. And this matters a lot. This is not something that we can just, it's not important. It's not important to understand yes, it is. Yes, it is. Because there is a reason why why people are betting, are having blind faith in the right-wing populist and nationalist parties and fascistic parties, and not in the left. There is a reason. It's not because of the values and the principles of the left are wrong, and because that's the system. Because we already assume that these systems have been experimented and have failed. That's again, it's prejudice. Okay, it's not because it's the use of a partial truth or some facts to build incorrect, flawed, and manipulated a narrative to manipulate people. And most of us do not get it, because we do not think in terms of principles and values, and the roots of what it's wrong with the existing systems, including, as I said, our imperialist civilizational heritage, okay, that is still the frame for most of the countries, if not all. And we need to understand this and the principles and values of the society we want. Just think about the economy. How should the economy be organized? I mean, what kind of political economy and political system, and how do we need to organize a society in these vertical hierarchies that we have today, that promote and subjugate people into a system of you have to fight for to climb the social ladder, because otherwise you will become a loser. You will not make anything. You would just be your life would be wasted. But can your life be wasted too, playing that game? Can you destroy yourself from the inside to become part of this game, to play according to the rules of this game? Does it have to do with a meaningful life, with a true purpose, where justice and truth and the respect for life and nature really matters? And when I talk about life, I talk about humanity itself. Does it matter or not? Can you have an introspection of what you have to do since your childhood? Especially when you go to school, or especially when you start to understand what is being done with you to shape you, to instrumentalize you, not only to indoctrinate, it's to instrumentalize and shape, and tell you there is a list to choose. If you don't play according to it, you might become a loser. Okay? Do you want to be a loser? Or you want to be the winner? And there's this perfect society, this dysfunctional society, where we are not supposed to be. We have the illusion that we are becoming the best. We are taking the best of us. No, we are being instrumentalized in a way that we develop our skills, specific certain skills, and we can become great in something. But it doesn't mean that we become more humanized, which means a better human being that respects principles and values that really matter, and for the collective well-being. And by collective well-being I mean societal and terrestrial. I mean for the whole thing, as part of a holistic process, as part of the web of life and the web of nature, not as part of a process of climbing the pyramid scheme of wealth accumulation and private property accumulation and proprietary rights, that is just a way to make the very few, the most psychopathic, the most sociopathic, the most narcissistic and megalomaniac people on earth, the ones that truly make it. But they only make it because they are allowed to, because we support them. And why do we support them? Because we don't do the critical analysis, where we don't train ourselves into becoming into being able to truly understand the mechanisms through which we are manipulated and why we become tribalized for the wrong reasons, for the wrong objectives. And then our societies are